Good morning. It is Sunday, July 30th at about 5:20 in the morning. I'm Larry Cedar. I'm back with you for another session on scanning, spelled just like it sounds, S-C-A-N-N-I-N-G. Scanning, I'm a little out of breath and I'll explain to you why in a minute, is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. That's the goal, calm. So I'm a little out of breath because I just finished working out. So I want to talk a little bit about exercise and working out as it relates to scanning. We talk about scanning being a movement from a contracted state to an expanded state. We take deep breaths, we expand. Exercise is wonderful because it expands you. It's also a contradiction because it alternates contraction and expansion. You contract the muscles to exercise. You take deep breaths to expand. So if you want to increase your dynamic range as a human being, in other words, if you want to be able to really contract well, which is what all the best people do, look at Olympic gymnasts. I mean, they know how to really contract well. And you also want to know how to expand well, like a Zen master who can achieve complete peace and calm. Then you want to practice both. There's a misconception with this process that scanning is bad and expanding is good. That's not true at all. I mean, contracting is good and expanding, I'm going to get it right, that contracting is bad and that expanding is good. But that's not true. They're just opposite ends of the spectrum. What we want to do through the practice of scanning is train ourselves to be able to move ourselves back into a more expanded state when we become overly contracted. That's all we're doing. And the book on which this technique is based was written by a man named Thaddeus Golas, G-O-L-A-S. He wrote a book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And he talks about how in trying to improve ourselves, try to become better, more enlightened beings, we try to become all good, all peaceful, all calm, all wise, And he says that's not human. We're like pendulums. We swing from one side to the other. And when we're trying to do that, we're trying to become a pendulum that swings only to one side. Well, that's not true, and that's not alive. That's just frozen. So we're pendulums. We go back and forth between contracted states and expanded states. That's natural. That's human. That's real. I mentioned yesterday that as much as I am practiced in this technique, that doesn't mean I, like any other human being, don't go to places of darkness and depression and anger and tension and neurotic, obsessive thinking. That's human. But what I try to do with scanning is train myself to be able to bring myself back to a more expanded state till I'm hopefully centered, so I have a balance. Because a full life, a rich life, an enlightened life is one that has it all. You're completely human. You have mistakes, you become contracted, you get angry, you get upset, you mess things up, but then you also have a way to come to a place of peace and quiet. Now, what happens in modern living and in everyday life is that you become overly contracted and you don't know how to let go, and you have problems as a result of that. You become overly contracted, you become physically racked with pain or discomfort, you become mentally obsessed and angry, closed off, all those things which come with over-contraction. So all we're doing is learning how to expand to bring ourselves back, because we do a lot more contracting than we do expanding. It's habitual. We think that's the way to get things done. That's all I wanted to say as a way of introduction. After working out, you're very contracted. You can see the way I'm kind of amped up. So let's get to the technique. We always start with the same practice, and that is deep breaths followed by stillness and silence. And we talk about that because deep breaths are expansive by nature. And stillness and silence is the opposite of contraction, because if contraction is doing and talking and thinking, stillness and silence is the opposite of that. Doing nothing, thinking nothing. Actively moving towards nothing, being still. So we start the technique with that preliminary process. We're going to start with 3 deep breaths, followed by 15 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. 15 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Don't move a muscle, but continue to breathe. Deep breath. So we've begun. So the idea being that no matter where you are in your day, no matter what you've done, no matter how badly you feel, You have a tool, in this case, what I call scanning, to bring yourself back to a more expanded state, to find a place of center, calm, stillness, peace, quiet, happiness, joy. You have that tool. That's all we're doing. Then life goes on. The man who wrote this book, as I mentioned, Thaddeus Goldis, people were always apparently astonished to meet him because here he was, this guru of enlightenment teaching people how to expand. When they met him, he was this tough, smoking, I don't want to talk to you. I wrote him a letter once. He wrote me back. I said, I'm interested in your technique. And he goes, fine, whatever. He was that was his personality. So he was a perfect example of exactly what he said. That being that I do know how to become enlightened and at peace and calm and quiet and expand. That doesn't mean I stop being the opposite, contracted, which is a hard driving, thinking, writing, grouchy, angry, aggressive human. So again, it's a mistake. A lot of people think that they can be, as I said, a pendulum that swings only to one side. No, you want to become a full range pendulum. So don't be discouraged if when you practice this technique, you experience great frustration because you keep going back to your old, let's say, habits. So that's fine. That's human. That's real. You'll evolve as you must when you're intended to. But now you know you have the ability to move yourself back to an enlightened, expanded, quiet, peaceful, calm place. So you don't have to be afraid because you know you do both. You're in balance. Let's go now to 5 deep breaths followed by 30 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. 5 deep breaths. You're expanding, so take as deep a breath as you can, followed by 30 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. Deep as you can, 3 more. And 7. 5. 30 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Deep breath. It's so simple. This technique is so simple. It's the beauty of it. All it takes is deep breaths and stillness and silence. All you're doing is saying to yourself, I'm going to move in the opposite direction. I'm going to expand. No matter what you're thinking, no matter what's going on, no matter how confusing or horrible or aggravating or angering or distressing the situation, you undoubtedly in those situations become fearful and you go to contract muscularly, emotionally, mentally to try to deal with that situation, and it just seems to get worse. And if you can just remember to take a breath and to sit in stillness and silence, the situation is not going to go away. You're still going to have to deal with it, but you'll be able to deal with it in a more clear-headed, calm, rational manner. You won't feel as I always say, bad. You'll come to center. And it just starts with a breath. Just starts with one breath. So again, my obsession with this technique, the reason I love it so much, is its simplicity. No matter what I'm feeling, no matter what I'm going through, if I can just find a moment to take a deep breath, if I can add to that a couple more breaths, add to that some stillness and silence, and then add to that what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique, which is the incremental muscular release, I can go a long way towards bringing myself back to center. It doesn't change your circumstances, it changes your ability to deal with them, and therefore feel more capable and less afraid and more at peace. So now we're going to expand that even further. We're going to go to 7 breaths. It's funny how exercise sometimes gets me disoriented. I said 7 before, but it's 7 now. 7 deep breaths followed by a full minute, 60 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. And if you're anything like me, I tend to be very high-strung, talk fast, think fast, always agitated about what I need to do next. If you're anything like me, when I go to scan, it's probably the first time in 24 hours that I've taken a breath and sat in stillness and silence. So it's quite a contrast from my normal activity, which makes it all the more beautiful, because then I'm really aware that I'm changing things. I'm changing direction. I'm coming away from that contracted state into an expanded state. So I feel like there's a chance that I might actually improve my sense of self. It's really a wonderful feeling. 7 deep breaths, 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. 7 deep breaths. If you feel dizzy, take a moment. Dizziness comes with not being used to deeply breathing. Your body's going, well, what's going on? You're probably under-oxygenated because you've probably been holding your breath, which is what you do when you're contracted. So your body's going like, whoa, what's all this oxygen? And it's adapting to it. But don't be bothered by that. That's natural. Won't hurt you. 7 deep breaths, 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. 2 more. Last one, deep as you can. 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence, but continue to breathe. Deep breath. Just make a note, pay attention to what differences, if any, you feel. How do I feel different? In the simple taking of breaths, you have expanded. It may be just a tiny amount, doesn't matter. You can't contract and expand at the same time. Once you're expanding, you stop contracting. So you're moving the dial. The reason I say the incremental release of muscular tension, incrementalism is very important to this technique. It doesn't matter how small the change, as long as you make the change. I always say the most challenging thing for me with scanning is to start. Because to start scanning, I must stop doing what I've been doing. I must stop thinking about what I've been thinking about. And I have to concentrate on nothing but expansion, taking a deep breath. And because contraction is the process of holding, when you are contracted, you don't want to let go. So you will feel tremendous resistance. In the mirror, sitting down in a chair and taking a moment to take a deep breath and sit in stillness and silence, you will feel messages being sent to you from your body, your mind, your heart. No, no, no. You must keep going. You must keep thinking. You must keep obsessing. You must keep tensing up. It wants to hold on. It wants to stay contracted. Don't take those feelings as a sign that you must stop and go back to what you were doing. Take those feelings as a sign that you've struck gold. You've actually come face to face with your own contracted state. You're making yourself consciously aware that you are contracted. We can go through days and weeks without really accepting or confirming the fact that we are contracted. We just try to pretend we're just living our life. When you sit down and take a deep breath and sit in stillness and silence, you actually have to confront your own contraction. And it's difficult sometimes because we don't want to let go. I always say this, after years of practicing this scanning, every time I start, I feel tremendous resistance within myself. But now I know to take that as a sign of, whoa, it's really important that you keep going. Look how contracted you are. The more resistant you feel, the more contracted you are, the more important it is that you scan to bring yourself back into balance, to bring yourself into a more expanded, balanced state. So just be aware of that. If you find yourself going like, this isn't working, I hate this, I don't want to do this, this feels terrible. So what if it's been a week since I scanned? I don't want to ever do, well, you're maintaining that contracted state. And look, if that makes you feel good and happy, go for it. You know, some people can live in a contracted state like nonstop, and God bless them. Me personally, if I become overly contracted, I feel bad. So I've had to find a way to bring myself back to center, and that's what this is. Okay, so we've done our preliminary breathing, deep breaths, and sitting in stillness and silence. I also like to say that if you take nothing else from these lessons, if you want to call them that, Deep breaths, stillness, and silence. You will have learned all you need to know to scan. Done. I think the best, if you want to call them self-help techniques, are the simplest ones. There's no phrases, there's no words. I use words to kind of describe things, but name them whatever you want. But it's a technique that's accessible. A lot of people say they don't want to do this because it's too simple. They need to have a book that goes with it. They need long explanations. They need a philosophy. Well, there's a book, Thaddeus Skolas's The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. He doesn't talk about scanning, but it's the foundation of the technique. Feel free to read that. I encourage you to read that. But as far as using scanning to improve your life, shall we say, to make you feel better as opposed to feeling bad, deep breaths, stillness and silence, and the next phase, which is the actual incremental release of muscular tension. Squeeze your hands together. Tight, tight, tight. That's contraction. That is one of the two processes, fundamental processes of the universe, according to Thaddeus Skolas. Contraction is one. See what that feels like? That's strength. That's decisiveness. That's taking action. That's committing. But it's also tension, pain. It all comes together. If you become overly contracted, it's not a good thing. You start to feel very, very tired, distracted, in pain, and so forth. So contraction is a good thing. It's one side. The other side is the opposite, expansion. On my count, let go of all tension in your hands. 3, 2, 1, and release. Drop them to your sides. Take a deep breath. That's expansion. Contraction, expansion. So if contraction is what we do 90% of the day, then we want to develop our ability to expand, and that is releasing muscular tension. The muscles are the tool we use in scanning to bring ourselves into a more expanded state, because muscles can only either contract or expand. They can't do both at the same time. Can't do it. Can't make a fist. Sorry about the earthquake. You can't make a fist and release a fist at the same time. You can't do it. You can alternate. But because once you've started expanding, you've stopped contracting, well, it's easy to bring ourselves into an expanded state. Just start letting go of muscular tension. And you've started bringing yourself into a more expanded state. Now, there may be parts of your body or your mind which still want to contract. Yeah. You know, your contraction wants to contract. But you're going to start nudging yourself into a more expanded state, coaxing yourself into a more expanded state using the muscles as a guide. Every time you release muscular tension, you have expanded a little bit. Doesn't matter how small it is, this to this, you did it. So we're going to start with that. Make a fist again. I'm sorry. Squeeze your hands together. Tight, tight, tight. And 3, 2, 1, release. That's what you're going to do. You feel that? A lot of times after I squeeze my hands together, and you can try this, and then let go, I feel an impulse to take a deep breath. The body will get on board with you. If you start sending it expansive signals, it will go, oh, time to start expanding. And it'll cooperate with you. And one of the things the body does when it wants to expand is take a deep breath. The opposite of holding your breath. So if you do a muscular release and you feel an impulse to take a deep breath, take it. Follow your instincts. Follow that impulse. Your body wants to expand as much as it wants to contract, but it needs you to tell it where to go. Okay, so we're going to start with what I call zone 1 of 8 zones in the body. As defined by me, feel free to break up your body into any division you want. For me, I start with 1. You can follow with me and then come up with your own. On my count, I want you to release all the muscular tension in your face. 3, 2, 1, and release. You see how simple that was? You instructed your musculature of a particular area of your body, and we do it for different parts as opposed to the whole body because it's easier to isolate and focus on different sections. But you instructed your body to let go of muscular tension. That's what you can do. That is your power in this technique. You can change your state from contracted to expanded by releasing muscular tension. You've begun. The face. 3, 2, 1, and release. It's like someone shot you with a tranquilizer and you went, hey, how's it going? Fine. Oh. You can see it if you look in the mirror. You can feel it. So I always say a big part of scanning is paying attention, noticing, becoming aware of your state, how contracted you are, how expanded you are, how you can move yourself into a more expanded state, what that feels like. So you just did it. So pay attention to how it feels. 3, 2, 1, the face, and release. So there, that's the feeling. That's scanning. That is the heart and soul of scanning. The breathing and stillness and silence is the preliminaries. You can do that anytime you want. But the muscular release is the fundamental core of scanning. Zone 2, top of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. And you may go, what does that feel like? What does the top of my head feel like? Well, initially, you might not be able to quite identify it. But as you practice, you'll start to go, oh yeah, I can focus on the top of my head. I can feel the tension, and I can feel out. 3, 2, 1, and release. I let go a little bit of that muscular holding I was doing. That's what your body's doing. It's holding. You've heard the expression, keep it together. Well, when we're scared or frightened or tense, worried about something, which most of us are 90% of the time these days, you hold to protect yourself. You take a position, a defensive position, consciously or unconsciously. I'm always amazed at how when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I'll just scan for an hour in bed. Over the course of the night, through my dreams or whatever, I become very contracted. And I'll start to scan, and suddenly I find myself going, taking deep breaths and feeling this release. And I can actually get out of bed much more refreshed and relaxed and loose. So you're just building a consciousness of where your body's at. Zone 2, the top of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. Great. Zone 3, the back of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. There it goes. And awareness of your contraction, the contraction of your muscles, can take many forms. Sometimes I feel like it's you ever seen those wide rubber bands? Maybe it's stretched across the back of my head. And when I release 3, 2, 1, and I release and I let it go slack, and my skin, the skull just goes slack, and I feel it droop. So that's what you're doing. However that feels to you, just induce that release. Back of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. Breaths, breaths, breaths. I can't emphasize enough how valuable it is to take a deep breath anytime, anywhere. You can even do it slowly. If taking a deep breath is too loud, just go. Expansion. That's simple. Zone 4 is the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. And again, the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. And people ask me, why do you snap? Because that sound makes me think of a switch. If it takes energy to contract a muscle, which it does, which is why it's so exhausting sometimes, even if you're not doing anything, when you're tense or worried, your muscles are contracted defensively. If it takes energy to contract a muscle, then when you turn off the switch, turn off the power to that muscle, it just goes slack. Let's say the sound I'm making is the power. I turned off the power. So that's what you're doing. You turn off the power to the muscle and it goes slack. And you're going to get better and better and better at this. At any part of your body, you'll be able to let go of the muscular tension. The only thing that discourages people in this process is they go, I barely felt a thing. I say to them, did you feel something? Did you feel a slight change? Did you feel a slight release? Did you feel from this to this? You did it. You did it. Incremental muscular release, because it's cumulative. It builds. If you could take 5 minutes to scan, take 5 minutes. If you could take a half an hour, take a half an hour. You won't believe how far you can bring this state of expansion over time, because you're gently persuading your body to let go, and it will let go. Zone 5 is the shoulders. Let them drop. 3, 2, 1, and release. Now you may start to feel an overall sensation of release in your body. That's it. Your body starts to get the message. It's moved past the fear of losing control. It's moved past the fear of releasing the defensive position. And now it's starting to go, this feels really good. I didn't realize I was in a muscular cage, which I'm now starting to loosen up. It's like you're in a straitjacket and you're starting to release the buckles, and your arms can move and your shoulders can move, and the constraints are coming off of you. If you're a creative person, I'm an actor. If you're a writer, actor, painter, dancer, any of those things, singer, muscular tension is your opponent. It restrains you. It constricts your ability to go with your creative impulses. So as a creative person, it's very valuable in any job, actually, in relationships, it's very valuable to be relaxed, because everything about you is more available. Your heart, your soul, your muscles, your breath, everything becomes freer and more available as you drop these muscular constraints that you have consciously or unconsciously built into your self. So we're letting go of all that. Zone 5, the shoulders. 3, 2, 1, let them drop and release. One more time, the shoulders. 3, 2, 1, and let them drop. Now I am happy to be a guide in this technique. I feel a need to share this technique with people because I'm so excited about it. But the idea is, and people will tell me sometimes they watch these sessions, sometimes they put them on in the background and just listen to kind of build that consciousness. But ultimately what you want to do is master this for yourself, to be able to sit in a room by yourself and guide yourself through it. It's your own inner voice that you're trying to develop into this expansive voice. So it's really important that you take the time on your own to experiment with this, to explore, to see what you can do to let go of your own muscular tension. And it can be a lonely pursuit. There's no one there to help you. There's no one there to talk about it. You have to do it yourself. But the benefit is, as you start to master it, it's just a wonderful feeling of self-confidence and hope, because you begin to see that you are not necessarily being buffeted about by the circumstances of life. You can actually adjust your own sense of being. You don't have to face the day with fear or trepidation, because you know no matter what happens, no matter how bad things may get or challenging they may get, you have the ability to take a moment, sit down, take a breath, sit in stillness and silence, expand, come back to center, and look at things in a fresh, more capable way. So the chances are you'll deal with things more effectively. So I encourage you to practice. Keep a log. Try to do an hour a day, either in 10-minute segments or 5-minute segments or half-hour segments, whatever. But keep track so that at the end of the day you can say, I did it. I built scanning into my life. I do an hour a day, half an hour a day. I've begun to make that a part of my consciousness, so I'm not always just contracting. I actually know how to balance myself. I have that tool. It's part of my day. It's part of my day. And as much as I practice and as much as I believe in this, and I always say I should do more and more of it, I can only manage an hour a day. That's how contracted I am by nature. But I do that hour, because I know if I don't, I'm going to get out of balance. Zone 6 is the chest, the stomach, and the front of the waist, what I call the plate of armor. See if you can focus on that area and let go of the smallest amount of muscular tension. 3, 2, 1. Here we go, and release. And again, the chest, stomach, front of the waist. 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. Another. Check in, see how you feel. How does it feel different to have even slightly expanded? I always feel just more still. I feel much more comfortable doing nothing. It feels like a valid place to be. It's legit. It feels good. There's a tendency when you are contracted to think that unless you're doing, building, talking, thinking, writing, planning, worrying, that you're not doing anything to help your life, to advance your life, to protect yourself. And we're very much afraid of letting go of the contracted process because we feel like we'll either lose momentum, go backwards, become vulnerable, be destroyed on some level. We're fearful of it. But as you start to move into a more expanded state, you'll see that the opposite is true. Well, not the opposite, but the opposite is also true. The value of doing nothing, thinking nothing, being in stillness and quiet and silence. Taking a less fearful position, a more trusting, more open, more joyful, hopeful position of stillness and silence makes the world look pretty great. And now you can go back to the issues you were dealing with a clear head. You can actually listen to what people are saying because you've quieted that voice in your head. You can actually see things for what they are as opposed to what the voice in your head is telling you they are. You're coming at the world from a place of clarity, stillness, focus. So, very valuable. Zone 7, down the back, past the waist, into the all-important pelvis. The pelvis, I always say, is a very sensitive region. It's the area of sexuality and waste elimination. And so it is fraught with fear and anxiety and tension for all the obvious reasons. Loss of control, loss of impulse control, loss of physical control, desires. All those things are centered in the pelvis. So we tend to hold, we tend to clench in that area, consciously or unconsciously. And again, one of the things about scanning is that it encourages a sort of consciousness. You become aware where you hold your tension. You may not have been aware how much tension you were holding in your neck or shoulders or pelvis. As you scan, you start to go, whoa, wow, look how I was holding that, you're not even aware of it. And as you start to let go, you start to feel freer. You start to take more deep breaths. You start to see that you can just be in an open, relaxed state and be safe. Your blood circulates better. Your blood vessels are opening up. You'll feel a throbbing. You're breathing more easily. You're feeling sensations that you may have cut yourself off from that are making you feel alive. One of the things I've learned through scanning is that one of the reasons I get so distraught when I'm contracted is I've stopped breathing. And your body goes into a panic when you don't have enough oxygen. It thinks you're dying. So you start to get agitated and upset. And you get more agitated, so you contract some more. You stop breathing. You breathe even less. And it's self-perpetuating. So when you break that cycle and go back the other way, when you expand, you start to breathe. You start to have oxygen circulating through your body. And your body goes, oh, oxygen, I'm safe. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. That's what the body thinks it's going to die. So you bring yourself to a place of comfort and ease. It's going to be okay, basically, is what this does. It's going to be okay. So down into the pelvis, down the back, past the waist, into the pelvis. See what you can do about releasing even the smallest amount of tension in your pelvic region. That clenching, that holding we do. 3, 2, 1, and release. I instantly felt myself needing to take a breath because I was sending a message to my body. It's safe to breathe. It's safe to breathe. Frequently when you're in a tense situation and it comes to an end, what's the first thing you do? Whoa, that was scary because you held your breath when you were fearful, and when it was safe, you breathed. The pelvis, 3, 2, 1, and release. And 3, 2, 1, and release. I won't go into the specifics, but having a relaxed pelvic region has many, many benefits, and you can imagine. I won't go into the details, but you can imagine the benefits of having the pelvic region be free to function as it was intended. So think about that and take some time to relax the pelvic region. 3, 2, 1, and release. And pay attention to what that feels like to release muscular tension in all of these areas. How did that feel different? Can I replicate that feeling? Can I do that again? Can I go even further? Pelvis, 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. We're going to wrap this up soon because I'm going longer. I like to go a half an hour typically, but we've been talking about a lot today because I came in all hyped up from exercise. I apologize. Anyways, down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. 3, 2, 1, and release the feet. Equally as important as the pelvis. Lots of nerve endings in the feet. As you know, if you have a foot massage, you feel wonderful because the foot and the nerves in it are connected to all the major organs of the body. The feet are incredible. That's why reflexology is so potent. So if you can induce relaxation in your feet, if you can bring the circulation up, if you can open the blood vessels in your feet, if you can feel that throbbing, if you can feel sensations, if you've relaxed those muscles, again, that will translate into your entire body. Everything's connected. When you release one part of your body, the other areas go, what's going on? Oh, I see, we're expanding. Let's follow along. The feet, 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. And the feet again, 3, 2, 1, and release. Two things you will definitely feel when you start to expand is a throbbing of the musculature, of the veins, of the blood vessels as you literally open up those blood vessels and the circulation becomes freer. And the second is tingling. You've actually gone from a place of having cut off your feelings. When you're in a defensive position in life, you tend to hold, constrain, bury your feelings. As you start to expand and relax, sensations will come back, emotional and physical. You'll feel tingling in your feet, your pelvis, your arms, your neck, your face, your shoulders. You'll feel a throbbing. These are all signs that you are expanding. Okay, and that's a good thing. And I want to end, and I went through these very quickly, but please take much more time with these as you do them on your own. You can take one zone and explore that for an hour. It's all good. Whatever approach, however you come to this, any expansion is valuable. So keep that in mind. The smallest amount in any part of your body, a simple breath, it's all expansive. But I started to say, and I forgot what I was going to say. I'm going to come back to the way I started, which I don't remember what it was. In any case, see how you feel. See what this does for you. See if you can get yourself to do it a certain amount a day. Keep a log. And it's the simplest technique in the world. It can be done for 30 seconds. It can be done for 30 minutes. There's no expressions or phrases to learn. Everything I've named, I've done, so I remember them. Name them as you wish. Just remember to take the time each day and start with simply a deep breath. Let's take one now. Let's sit for 15 seconds in stillness and silence. Deep breath. And that's it. That's scanning, the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. I will post this on my Facebook page for those of you who came in late and want to see the whole thing. You can download it, play it whenever you want. Every session is basically the same, but I do it for myself. Every day I like to scan, including a public session. I will also post it on the scanning page. It used to be spelled S-Q-A-N-N-I-N-G. You might do a search and find it there. I'm trying to get it changed just to regular scanning, S-C-A-N-N-I-N-G. Scanning the body, looking for muscular tension, just for simplicity's sake. It's Sunday. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.